So before I begin with my speech or presentation, I would first like to carry on a simple experiment. What comes to your mind when you see these words? A woman shopping in Gangnam and a black man fighting. Now, what comes to your mind immediately when you see these words? This is, in fact, a very famous experiment, but I would still like to try it because it does have a point. Now, we may have all thought of something like this. A woman shopping in Gangnam or a black man fighting. However, as you might have expected, these words may indicate something totally different. A woman shopping in Gangnam and a black man fighting. As I said, you might have expected the result of this experiment, but I still did it because it does have a point that we all have stereotypes in our minds to a certain extent. Now, we live in the modern society where the barriers of the domestic and international barriers of knowledge and information are broken down. We live in a global society where an age of knowledge and information, where we get to access a lot of information, and we also acquire the common knowledge or the adequate knowledge that we are expected to have. Now, through these, we naturally gain generalized images or categories of what kind of people they are or how to look at the world. This is something called socialization. But through this, we can say that now we live in a world of stereotypes. Now, before we really go into stereotypes, we should first understand what stereotypes are. How are they formed? And essentially, what is the basic concept behind stereotypes? To understand stereotypes, we first need to trace up to the concept of tribalism. Now, tribalism, as the word is newly defined and used in the modern society, is the tendency people have to categorize people and put people into certain groups, not only others, but themselves as well. So there are two types of tribalism: categorizing other people, putting them into groups, and understanding them. Secondly, categorizing yourself in a group and having loyalty to a group and understanding yourself to be a certain member of a particular group. Now, I think that tribalism is a natural tendency, is something inevitable for all human beings to have. Now I would like to explain two reasons why tribalism is something inevitable for humans to have. There are two main reasons. First of all, it's about survival. It's instincts for human beings. Now, back in the ancient times, in the prehistoric times, yes, let's think in the prehistoric times, you see a total stranger come up to you, then with the limited information you have about that total stranger, you need to quickly decide, you need to quickly judge whether that person is a friend or a foe, whether you can collaborate with that person to perhaps hunt an animal or gather some more fruits, or whether that person came to take your stuff and therefore you should first attack the person or hit that person or escape. Now, this survival instinct comes down to us in the modern society today. Now, of course, it's not a matter of survival in the modern society, but rather it's about enhancing your social benefits or escaping social embarrassment. The second reason to this is more about neuroscience. It's something that is programmed in our brains naturally. So many anthropologists and scientists, such most representatively Bernard, Kilworth, or Dunbar, have said that the human brain can only fully understand 150 to 290 people. What that means is that we can only understand and comprehend an individual fully. Our brain has only the capacity to understand about 290 people. And if the number of people we interact with exceeds that, which will exceed in everyone's life, unless they are an anthropophobic that is stuck in their rooms, only looking at the computers, then our brain has to find another method to understand the people that they interact with. Now, the simplest and the fastest and the easiest, the most efficient way to do this is through first gaining the knowledge about the person, putting them into a group that you know about, and then assuming that the person has the characteristics of a group. This is where stereotypes come in. Because tribalism is an inevitable nature of humankind, the main influences of tribalism, stereotypes, also come into our lives too. Now let's look at the process of stereotyping. I mentioned it briefly just before, but let's look at it in a more deeper level. So let's suppose a situation where you meet a complete stranger. You come face to face with a complete stranger. Now you first recognize that person, and what you do immediately, with or without you knowing, is highlighting the key characteristics of the person. Is that person a male or a female? Is he white, black, or Asian? What kind of hairstyle does he have? What kind of clothes is he wearing? What kinds of vocabulary or words does he use? And what kind of accent does he have? The rest you'll know better than me. Then after we gather these essential, little but vivid information about the person, you try to associate the person to a certain category or group that you know of through socialization. And then when you put that person into a certain category, you assume that the person has the characteristics of the group that you have defined the person as in. So you assume, it's a simple assumption, that the person will have the characteristics of the group. Now, to some of the things that I have talked about, stereotyping is a mental process that pays heightened attention to the fact that people belong in the same group, but ignores the innumerable differences that may exist between individuals. Basically, it's hasty generalization. Of course, to a certain extent, stereotyping is essential, and we cannot evade stereotyping. But when this stereotyping goes overboard, when we stereotype too much, then it can become a severe problem. Indiscriminate stereotyping. One of the many examples for indiscriminate stereotyping that is famously used is the crimes against the Sikhs since 9/11. Now, Sikhs, if you don't know, are believers of the Indian religion Sikhism. But after 9/11, many Sikhs were attacked, their shops were vandalized, and some were even killed by many angry Americans just because they saw the skin color of the Sikhs, and in their logic thought that the Sikhs were somehow related to Muslims, and somehow they were also related to the catastrophe of 9/11. But we see that the Sikhs are in no manner related to Muslims or 9/11. Now, coming closer to home, we may think about Korea. I think that Korea is a country that now many other countries have these characteristics too, but I feel as a Korean that Koreans especially have a lot of stereotypes and prejudices on people and like to judge people on their on certain values. For example, if you meet someone, you rather than getting to know that person fully before that, you actually strive to answer these kind of questions. What kind of university did he graduate? What kind of car does he drive? Where does he live? These questions that we ask show us that we like to put people into certain groups and define them as a certain member of the group and assume that the person has the characteristics that we believe the participants of the group have. Now also, I think that Koreans have a strong racial stereotyping because as one of his, I don't know why, but many people, we seem to awe Caucasians or white people. So as one of the factors that led to Korea having one of the biggest plastic surgery markets in the world, is to look like them. However, when we are interacting with or dealing with people from Southeast Asia or Africa or other regions, we do not seem to have the same attitude as we do towards white people. Now, as I've told you the many harms of stereotyping, which you may already know of. However, we cannot say that stereotyping is a social evil that should be eradicated, that should be wiped off the face of the earth as a whole. That itself, saying that stereotyping is bad, will be a stereotype on stereotypes, if you understand. But I want to say that stereotype, although even if we say it is an evil, is an inevitable process of humankind, and it's an inevitable kind of something programmed in our minds, so we cannot actually escape it. But on the other hand, if we think of it, it's actually very realistic. The fastest and easiest way to know about a person, because we do not always have the time or and we cannot always get to know the person fully. And through our past experiences, we have seen that it has a high probability of success, although we cannot say it is always right. And as I just said, it is a part of our thought process, so we cannot actually abolish it. It's something inevitable. Then how, as human beings who have limited brain capacities and who have a natural tendency to categorize people, utilize stereotypes for a better good, utilize stereotypes for our benefits? The first solution I would like to propose is to understand stereotypes are just hypotheses. Now, for science students, not only science students, but students will know, we know what hypothesis is. It's just an educated guess about something. It's an educated guess, so it has a high probability, but it does not guarantee 100% of success. Which means that when we are stereotyping other people, we should first realize it may be wrong. And then that means that we shouldn't base radical decisions or very important decisions, such as the decision to shoot at a Sikh, on only stereotypes. We should go farther on to test the theory, to test if our stereotypes are actually correct. We may choose, so if we come face to face with a situation, an immediate situation, there will be no other path than to make your future judgments or decisions based on stereotypes. However, that will mean, because you are making a safe decision, it is a probability of gains, but that will mean that it has to be a motivation for you to actually getting to know about the person in the future, and in the future, so that you can test whether that hypothesis is correct or not. This leads on to my second point, which is about interaction and communication. So when you actually, as I said, stereotyping is a choice that has a relatively high possibility of success. However, there is a way to make that relatively high possibility of success to a almost guaranteed success. That is, to get to know people, to interact, and to communicate. It is inevitable for us to use stereotyping in immediate situations. However, after that, we should really try to get to know and interact and communicate. This, of course, applies to individual relationships, as we are living in now. We may first look at a new professor we met, and then based on stereotypes, we may think that the professor is very likes formal behavior or polite behavior, but then we have to test these stereotypes and get to know more about the people. Now, expanding it to a social level, I want to say that it can also be a method that we can use among divided social groups. The picture you see here is the Gaesong Industrial Complex, or Gaesongbongdan. I think that it is one of the many ways that we can reduce stereotypes, because although the two Koreas are neighboring countries, and we have a lot of misunderstandings and prejudices against each other. The government, of course, has prejudices against each other, and therefore the people too don't understand each other well. Therefore, we should, through interaction and communication, like the method of 개성공단, or other talks like what is going on right now, you try to understand the people and interact and communicate. Through this, we will be able to make better judgments. We'll be able to make safer and more success guaranteed judgments in the future. So what I have told you is not to abolish stereotypes as a whole. We should use them as an opportunity. We should be pioneers. We should be pioneers as not to go over the temptation to base all your decisions only on stereotypes, but to actually test them out and to utilize them and send out the idea. Then perhaps we will be living in a better society to live in. Thank you.